Hi, everyone. My name is Melonie Parker. I'm Chief Diversity Officer for Google. I'm joined by James Heighington, our Global Head of Diversity Strategy for this session. All of you in this session today know the demand for cloud technology solutions has ramped up dramatically these few months. The need for reliable tools that help teams collaborate remotely has never been greater. As your companies make decisions about whether you're working from home or the office, you might be starting to wonder how that will impact your workplace culture. You're probably asking questions like, how's the real value of my business's workplace culture? How might we continue to foster community and belonging with a more distributed workforce? How are my company's decisions influencing its commitments related to diversity, equity, and inclusion? I'll be upfront. I don't have all the answers. I'm wrestling with the same questions too. In fact, our CEO, Sundar Pichai, was recently asked about this. He mentioned how our campuses have been designed to foster collaboration and community, as well as chance encounters that lead to innovation. But he also said that we're looking at the data and the feedback from employees with an eye toward offering more flexibility to work from home in the future. These conversations are ongoing, and there are still many unknowns about the future. But today, what is clear is we need to have a deep understanding of our workforce before we begin to insert DEI into the dialogue in a meaningful way. And one of the key ways we reveal our understanding of our workforce and the progress we're making through DEI is through our Diversity Annual Report. We've published it the past 6 years, and we just recently released the 2020 report. So today, I want to share with you how we're building a workforce that reflects all communities, as well as some of the DEI strategies we're using to cultivate a sense of belonging at this time. Every year since 2014, we've published our Diversity Annual Report. We were one of the first to do so in our industry. The report is anchored on the fact that there are some underrepresented groups who have historically been discriminated against and excluded from opportunities, and who today remain affected by systemic racism, xenophobia, and the like. We continually try to look at our data and capture more nuances about all of the people who work at Google. We always want to see more humanity in the report. Everyone wants to see themselves reflected and validated. I should also note that we have supplements to this data, including a survey called Self ID, which is global. Through it, we're starting to expand how we look at our workforce. So, with that backdrop, I want to share with you what we're learning along the way. This report provides one of the largest publicly available DEI data sets in our industry. This data represents real people who make real contributions to our mission and our culture, and we must keep in mind that human element. Data drives everything Google does, from the way we develop products to the way we design our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Before we dive in, a couple quick notes on our data. First, we include gender data globally and race in the US. Around the world, there are various government protections on what data we must collect, as well as what data we cannot collect. This report is aligned with standard business practices for multinational corporations, even as we find new ways to collect more globally inclusive data through Self ID. Second, we use a plus sign in all our racial categories to indicate multiracial people are plussed in to each racial category. Previously, multiracial people were counted in a single category, which doesn't fully represent their identity. We made this change to be more inclusive. With DEI, most people think of the data surrounding how our workforce is growing to better reflect the communities we serve. These changes in our workforce representation are largely driven by two inputs: hiring and attrition. Let's start with hiring. Google did well in several key ways in 2019 when it comes to hiring. We have both tech and non tech jobs at Google. Last year, we saw the largest increase for Black tech hiring we've ever measured. We also look at new hires, our nooglers, as we call them. We're pleased that Black nooglers now make up the largest underrepresented racial group in non tech hiring. We measure success in other ways too. For example, a Googler built tool helped us identify and remove gender bias from job postings, which helped us to increase women applicants for many jobs. And our internship program, which is remote this summer, continued to build broader pathways to tech. We still want to see stronger hiring growth in some underrepresented groups, such as Native American Googlers, and we'll try to focus on that this year. In addition to hiring, it's equally important to focus on retaining Googlers from all underrepresented groups. With that in mind, our Latinx community is the first underrepresented group to see attrition rates for both women and men below the average, a positive development, even though there was a slight increase for Latinx women. Women on average at Google still had lower attrition rates than men. At the same time, attrition rates for Black women are now higher than average attrition rates. How do we do better with regards to retention? One strategy is we build on what works. For example, we have what we call retention equity teams. 84% of Googlers who went through that program have decided to stay at Google. We're already building on that number this year, which is critically important because retention is going to play a key role in helping us achieve our aspirational goals. We've covered hiring and attrition. Let's see where Google landed with representation overall. We saw continued growth in representation for women globally, as well as for Black and Latinx Googlers in the US. We also had the largest increase in Black plus representation overall and in technical roles since we began publishing. For the second year in a row, we maintained our growth rate of representation of women in leadership roles globally. We also see further proof that our internal mobility programs are paying off. Last year, the increase in women leadership was attributable mostly to promotions, not hiring, and this year we see a similar trend for our Latinx leaders. Tracking the annual data is very useful in working towards goals in hiring, retention, and overall representation. Let's zoom out a bit and look at trends over multiple years. The fact is, in recent years, we have scaled up our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to match the pace of Google's growth. Since 2014, Google's global headcount has increased by 170% and our US headcount by 180%. As you can see, the growth rate of underrepresented Googlers has generally grown even faster. This demonstrates an ongoing commitment to what we call responsible growth, with these percentage points representing thousands of new underrepresented Googlers joining. This data is critically important, and I hope all of you have taken that first step to start gathering data to help guide your DEI strategies and goals. But obviously, the work doesn't stop there. In Google's case, we're actually working in a larger context of our societal responsibility to build a robust, diverse talent pool for our industry. We must not only focus on Google's immediate hiring needs, but also on long term systemic solutions. Consider this: someone born in 1998, the year Google was founded, is only now completing university. Preparing the next generation workforce for the increasingly technical nature of work requires long term partnerships with government, educational initiatives, policymakers, and community organizations. And on that note, I want to turn it over to James Heighington.
Thank you. As Melanie stated, we view our work within the larger context of our societal responsibility that we have at Google to build a robust, diverse talent pool for our industry. And that's why in 2019, we strengthened our partnerships with both local organizations and local communities. And we started to expand the vision of our work to include not only education, but entire ecosystems in the communities that we call home. We're addressing these systemic challenges head on, and we're doing so in order to responsibly grow our talent and meet industry demand. This past year, we implemented versions of this holistic strategy in places like Atlanta, London, and cities around India by engaging with not just the educational sector, but with local businesses, community organizations, elected officials, even urban planning and real estate developers. This reflects how Google and these communities can come together to invest in shared success and realize mutual benefits. The issues that we're facing are systemic, and it's our responsibility to help address them and invest back into the communities and infrastructure that support our growth. As Google continues to grow, we have a responsibility to scale our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and increase pathways to tech in the communities that Google calls home. It's important to think about the end state here of what we're actually working towards when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is not about diversity just for the sake of diversity. This is not just about the heads that we have sitting at desks, but this is about creating a real sense of value for the experiences and expertise that everybody brings to their work every day. And those experiences and expertise can help improve our company, our products, and the services that we provide. But in order to truly unlock that value from every one of our employees, we need to ensure that everyone feels included. We need to ensure that everyone feels like they belong at Google. Inclusion means everyone. And that also means the job of creating an inclusive environment is a job for everyone. At Google, we believe this is not just the role of the diversity team. This is a shared responsibility among every employee that works at our company. And what we need to do is make sure that we are not just accelerating this work, but that we are expanding this work. And doing so that every Googler, in particular those from underrepresented groups, experiences an inclusive workplace. On this journey, we can measure how we are doing, and we do measure how we're doing through a series of internal indexes that we have created here at Google, and also by using external indexes that we have. For example, in 2019, we were proud to file the Disability Equality Index. And we use these indexes to benchmark our efforts and make improvements as we go along. These indexes aren't an end state, they are guideposts that we use on our journey. When we started reporting at this data in 2014, we used the data that we had available on hand at that time. And as Melonie mentioned, that's the data that we had collected through mandatory government reporting obligations. But as our understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion has grown, so too has the need for a more robust and inclusive data set. And we've responded by introducing a new data set, and that is self-ID. The goal of this is to have a more global and more fully inclusive data set that we can use to expand our DEI work in a data-driven way. Google is one of the only companies in our industry to collect this amount of information on a global scale. And here's how we've been able to put some of this data to use so far. We've hosted 5 Women of Color summits around the globe over the past year to ensure that we are focusing on the intersectional experiences of women of color at all the Google offices that we have. We've also used this data to continue to expand the company-wide goals that we have around accessibility. In addition, we use this data to analyze the company pulse survey that we do every year and ensure that we are looking at results by race and gender, in addition to things like disability status, non-binary genders, veterans and military service, for the LGBTQ plus communities, and age as well. When we also think of inclusive, it's important that we are being inclusive of more demographic identities, but we also want to ensure that we are being inclusive of more regions and taking a global approach of our DEI work. At Google, we have more than 100,000 employees spanning nearly 60 countries. Operating at this level brings an extra layer of complexity to everything that we do. At the same time, we need to balance that by recognizing diversity, equity, and inclusion is unique to every region. We need to ensure that we are understanding each local context and developing local strategies in response. And this year's diversity report reflects that work, with nearly half of the content coming from outside of the United States. What you see on the screen is just part of the work that we've done over this past year. We are continuing to invest in this work, and we are committed to telling more global DEI stories about our work as we go forward. All of the work that we've been talking about highlights how we are building a culture of belonging. And for more on that, I'll turn it over to Melonie to wrap us up.
Thank you, Jim. As we move further into 2020, Google is anchoring on the common thread that binds all of our DEI efforts. Belonging describes a vision that we continually aim to achieve. We can't see our colleagues in person due to COVID 19, but it's inspiring to me to see how our Googlers are finding creative ways to cultivate a sense of belonging. For example, our employee resource groups are hosting music, trivia, and dance parties on Google Meet, our video conferencing tool. Groups of Googlers are also pulling together to volunteer their time and expertise to important causes that help communities affected by COVID 19. And on a larger scale, Google and Google.org are supporting many organizations and communities within Google and across the globe, leveraging our tech and our funds. I'm sure that many of your companies and your employees have been engaged in similar activities to the ones I just described. The COVID 19 situation will continue to shape all of our DEI work. For Google, that means we must continually renew our commitments to serving communities with the greatest needs and ensuring equity for all. We have to take steps to help Googlers feel like they belong, even if they aren't physically back in a Google office just yet. We want to understand what belonging truly means and what needs to be done so that all Googlers can continue to help us co create our culture and that we leave no one out. I hope that some of the information that we've shared in our session today have spurred some ideas for you to consider in your own DEI work, from how you track workforce representation to your global DEI strategies. Have a great day.